first and foremost, rule number one, I want you all to be involved in this discussion right from the word get-go, all right? Good. Love that, okay? So my job here is to actually bring to you the kind of nuances of the experience that each of my co-panelists have been through, all right? And there's a lot of diversity in the panel that I have, okay? So, you know, Devita, you know, is an entrepreneur in her right, but from an entrepreneurial family, if I might say so. We've got Arjun on the other hand, who is, you know, who has worked for, multiple companies, large-scale companies, McKinsey, and he's now a leading venture capitalist. Now, $625 million is your fund size, right? Not a mean sum of money, right? And we have Deep Kalra. Who doesn't know Deep Kalra? How many of you use Make My Trip? All of you. Oh, there's a big section that doesn't here. Why is that?
They're probably not from India.
No, not from India. No.
We're going to try to change.
Yeah. And first-time entrepreneur, all right? How many people in this room wanting to be entrepreneurs? You're already up. So how many of you all in your first venture? Very good. Lovely. Very good. So this is perfect, okay? Now there's going to be a small difference because these are not exactly startups, okay? You know, Devita is running a $90 million company. He's a publicly traded company, couple of $1 billion. What's your market cap? You know? So this is about how do you think of an idea, okay? And to shatter the myth that entrepreneurialism basically means to start something small, right? Yeah, you may want to start it small, but I don't think in any way should you be shackling your ambition, okay? And the extent to which you want to take it forward. So there's going to be a slight difference. The nuances that I'm going to bring about here are about scaling businesses. How best to scale what you have started, all right? So that's the fundamental difference between egging you all to start something, since most of you are already here. And I just want to give, a few little salient points. I am both an entrepreneur, intrapreneur. I keep shifting my roles, okay? So I work for corporations, get out, have started my own firm, ran it for about 7 years, and then got back into corporate life. And I'm a huge believer that I don't think anybody should be branded as just an entrepreneur. You know, life is a series of experiences, and you need to be able to learn that in order to scale businesses. All right. Now, if I look at Deep, right? How many of you think that travel and anything to do with travel is anything but competitive? It's a super competitive field. In this kind of a field, what prompted you to start Make My Trip? And in that, if you could also share your introductory remarks and share the background. But most importantly, I want you to bring out your thinking, which prompted you to say, I'm going to do this on my own. And then, right from the word get-go, did you have a vision that you're going to make this into something huge?
Sure. Thanks, Sushma. So while the session is very specifically targeting, I think, a very important part, which is really the missing middle, which is scaling up, I do consider it the chasm of death. It's the toughest thing to do. Today in India, and I can only talk from an Indian context really, there's a lot of angel money chasing interesting ideas, interesting people. I mean, you can't even say good business early stage. So you'll get your angel funding, I think is not that hard. You probably get Series A too. But between Series A, Series B, and Series B, Series C, definitely it becomes very steep. So either the funnel becomes very steep or the climb becomes, whichever way. And what happens is that I think VCs, and Arjun will definitely add his perspective to it, but I can tell you from an entrepreneur point of view, because we raised our Series A way back in 2005, and then I had 3 rounds of private funding before we IPO'd in 2010 on NASDAQ. And then people really want to see this business take off as a real business and do what companies are supposed to do, which is, generate money, generate a profit. Of course, we're in this hyper-competitive stage now. So 2 years before IPO and 2 years after, we enjoyed profitability. And like Sushma said, India has just gone crazy in terms of everyone believing this is definitely the next China, which is kind of makes sense. The number of people we have, the middle class we have, and the internet, mobile penetration, etc. I think we all know that. but people thinking it's going to be that big, and I probably disagree on that because I think China is really far ahead. I've spent time there, I've understood that market quite well. And secondly, it's going to happen very quickly. So I think the real challenge is how long is it going to take to get there? So therefore, right now, probably too much money chasing very few good deals. But specifically, I can tell you my turning point, Sushma, to move away from corporate life. I had an MBA degree. I had a corporate job with a bank. I worked 3 years with ABN AMRO. Enjoyed ABN AMRO, didn't like banking, figured I want to do something more interesting in life. Was looking for a marketing kind of job, had a couple of offers, but did something completely, today I can say crazy or off the charts. I brought an American company called AMF Bowling to India to set up 10-pin bowling. I was all at 25, 26, and I believed family entertainment, there's no real avenue, etc. You're going through that phase, but real estate in India is even now so expensive. It's very hard to build a business. That much I learned, on which you take real estate as rental and try to generate a profit. It's very hard in India, especially in the big cities. Real estate values have been kept high for various reasons. There's a lot of cash income, etc., parked out there. And then I worked for GE Capital because I think I started panicking. I learned a lot in AMF Bowling, financial disaster, but learning tremendous because I was actually learning what all Indians know, and I don't know what the right term for this is in English, but it's called Dhanda or Jugaad. So I learned a lot of Dhanda, Jugaad. What is it? Street smart businessman?
Jugaad is now.
Oh, Jugaad is now. Oxford have accepted it as the, yeah. Okay. So I learned that because I met everyone who had real estate in the country, and I also met everyone who pretended to have real estate in the country, which is a very big segment. And then, of course, everyone wanted to do a joint venture, and everyone wanted to. So you realize how the businessman in India thinks. I left because the panic set in that I'd stopped learning the way my batchmates, classmates were learning. I don't think I was ever driven by what they were earning, but the learning was a big deal. If at 27, 28 you stopped learning, you really start panicking because obviously AMF wasn't an intellectual giant of a company. My boss sat in Richmond, Virginia. I had a small team out here, most of whom were 2 or 3 salesmen. The rest were people who fix contractors. So I joined GE Capital, and full credit to them to take on someone with a very crazy background and give a big position. I joined as a VP for business development, and my charter was to find new avenues to distribute consumer finance products, which was then called GE Countrywide, is now called GE Money. And a new avenue in 98, 99, not surprisingly, was the internet. And so I was formally introduced to the internet and informally. It's easy to say now, but I can tell you, I was completely taken in terms of how this is going to change our lives. It obviously has, but even way back then, I was like super excited about it, and I was one of those early adopters, so I was saying, we'll do everything on the internet. So my wife was trying to sell her old car, and I was helping her with it. I said, no, we should do this online. And she thought I was crazy. We did it online, and we got a much better deal than my close friend from the automobile industry was trying to get me, and not that anyone was trying to rip me off, but the point was there were 4 levels of intermediaries out there, and everyone was taking a cut, and you know how the internet disintermediates. And then I had a travel experience, which is very interesting, in July 99, which was our last freedom holiday, which is minus kids. Now it's how it's come. We didn't have kids, and my wife was expecting our first one. Now we come the whole circle. We're going to be empty nesters next year. So. But we were planning a trip to Thailand, and our doc had cleared my wife to travel, so we wanted to go to Phuket. No one doing online travel in India, so I was calling my trusted old travel agent called Vipin, and he got me the air tickets pretty soon on Thai, etc. And I said, extra legroom seat, please, Amrita, it needs more space right now, etc. And he said, yeah, no problem. When it came to the hotel, it went back and forth for a week. We just couldn't close it. And he would say, finally, he said, why don't you come here and sit with me and we'll make the booking. And I said, but that's bizarre because I'm online and I'm seeing, Asia rooms, and I'm seeing Expedia, and I'm seeing all of these things. And he's saying, yeah, but you can't book on them. You never know what you'll get, kind of thing. And he was protecting his business. And the more I saw it, and, I managed to see it the way we plan holidays now. We would sit late night. We had a dial-up modem, sit my wife, go through hotels saying, this is the right one, it's on the right beach, it's near Patong, but it's quiet. We finally got Coconut Lagoon for $60 a night and 6 nights. And I can tell you it was a moment of truth for me to put my card online then. And it's kind of funny now because I think about it. my God, why doesn't everyone do this? Well, it was a big deal. And I wasn't sure it will work out, and there was a lot of nervousness. And think about relatives of yours or friends of yours who made their first trip overseas. And just how nervous, especially Indians when they travel overseas for the first time, are. Is my passport valid? Is the visa valid? Will this work? Will I have foreign exchange? Language, money, vegetarian, food, all this stuff is going on. And lo and behold, Coconut Lagoon and 99. Lo and behold, Coconut Lagoon turned out to be quite like the pictures. It wasn't a sham. We saved $15 to $20 a night, so I saved over $100, which was a big deal that time. I felt really, really good about it, and it worked. And I'm at the reception there getting check-in, and I saw someone else come in and say, but I'm getting this rate online. And the guy's saying, go to the cyber cafe next door. These are those days. Book it online and you'll get that rate. And they were, of course, playing the valuation game. Our business is moving online. Couple of incidents, I think, and a lot of personal time spent on it said, this is game-changing. This is also a great opportunity to do my own thing. I have to be honest, I never really thought I want to be an entrepreneur. For me, the driving force was, someone's got to do this in the business. I tried very hard at G Capital to set up gindia.com. We got $1 million given to us by Pramod Bhasin, who was the CEO then, good friend now, terrorized us as a boss, but is a mellowed down individual now. And he gave us $1 million. He set up a team, and it was 14 guys from the whole company put together. And I learned last day that I wasn't part of that team. And I was like totally shattered. I said, but hang on, I gave the idea. He said, no, but what you're doing right now is very important for the business. So I just decided on an impulse, this is it. I'm going to branch out. So on All Fools Day of 2000, April 1, I had a company called India Ahoy, which was people coming to India, which was our first business, NRIs, non-resident Indians, and Make My Trip the brand before we launched. But yeah, so I think for me, the driver was this phenomena medium is huge. It's going to change our lives. I remember that crystal clear. Well, every night I would sit up for 3-4 hours post dinner till the wee hours of the morning and and just be obsessed. And I was not doing what many of you think I was doing. I was definitely looking at travel sites and I was really obsessed with it. And I said we should do something. And the second part was I connect the dots later that I really enjoyed my time at AMF Bowling where I was the boss. It was uncharted territory. No one had a playbook of how to do it. I enjoyed that part and I probably didn't enjoy the large company experience. And today as our company is scaling up, I value a lot of what I learned at G Capital and AMF Bowling about scaling up. But I also made up my mind we will never let certain things into our company. And those are the things which you don't want to get stuck in bureaucracy or people spending hours and hours and days making presentations. And so we do none of that. We have presentations, they're made by Excel or demos. Just demo from the phone straight, project what you're going to do wireframes. But we try to minimize wastage of time. Because I saw enough of that. So yeah, maybe a good place to pause.
Yeah, so it was definitely take a plunge.
Take a plunge, headlong.
It was
29 years old.
Yeah,
we had a horrific time between 2001 to 2003 were the darkest ages for us. We had no money. Our VC, early stage VC had pulled out. Bootstrap, we had up to 2 months. Sorry if some of you were in the other panel, which was pitching to the rich or whatever. So I'm trying to not be repetitive, but there is a bit of this which is important. We never had more than 2 months of money. And so what kept you going those days was clearly self-belief, belief in each other, some craziness, some genoon, but also saying, listen, if we give up now, we'll never even know if you build something. Because for me, it would be the second dot, 2 dots make a line, and I would not have the courage probably of doing it again. So I just said, let's hang in there. By 2003, 2004, we got a little bit of angel funding, both from customers actually. And he told me, I want to talk to your boss. And I said, I'm coming to India and are you guys looking for investment? And in my calmest voice, I'm saying, not really. It's like, give me your money. And he came and he gave us $150,000 and then we got one more. But 2005 is when I think we started life.
So we'll come back to the funding angle because I really want to contrast this with, with what Divita, right? I mean, has seen a first-time entrepreneur, your dad was a first-time entrepreneur, right? Has sort of grown in that business, and I'm sure you had pressures that you're going to take over the business of your father's, right? And how many? So they were you know a company called Zenith Computers, and
Yep.
that's the business that Devita comes from. But that's not what she's doing today. Okay, she's into television, into very high-end television, right? So tell us what prompted you to get into specifically television as a new line of business. All right, now TV is not. I mean, TV has been there. I remember the first time I saw television, 1972 in India. None of you would have been here, but it was ECTV, black and white. All
Yep,
right, and
I
it was a
remember.
big. You were there, thank you.
I was 3 years old.
So it was. I wasn't that far off. Okay, so it was. You know, so it's a market where there are multiple brands. Okay, but yes, there's a gutsy person who's come in here and said, look, I'm going to make the super high end television, and she's running a $90 million business.
The good part is that since a very young age, I always saw myself as a business person or a CEO. And none of the women in my family actually worked, even though everyone is incredibly educated. Even all the women in my family have masters, but they didn't work. And I specifically remember when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I had gone with my grandfather to, floppy disk used to come earlier, floppy disk. Some of people are nodding their head, or the millennials are like, what's that? So last century, pretty much. And I'd gone with my grandfather to a magnetics plant that he had to manufacture floppies. My family business has always been something like that. And it was really fascinating space. If you're a school kid and you go to this factory and you're seeing all these products being made, and apart from having the fascination for technology, the one thing that I always noticed when it came to men in India is that, if those were the bosses, the head of the family or the head of the company, there'd always be that immediate respect. People would see the boss and then there'd be like this respect. Everybody like stands straight and then talk. This is the moment when all of you should take a bow to give a And then, but I know, thank you, but I noticed that the women in India are generally very protected, and they are often indulged or tempered or whatever, but the power is not there. And I remember thinking, as a little girl, I said, I used to see that my father and my grandfather walk into the office and everyone is just sitting up straight and there's that respect and that power. And I was like, I want that. And forget the whatever conservative society background and all we come from. I don't want to be this indulged, pampered, princess person. I want to be someone who is independent, who is respected, who's powerful, and that really, that is very important to me. It's very important to me that women are seen naturally as bosses. As naturally as people who are decision makers. Naturally as people who have the power to move the needle and do big things. And I think that's what this whole conference is all about. But one of the biggest challenges is that, and that's why I asked the women here to applaud themselves, very few women see themselves that way. And unless you see yourself as someone who is a person who can handle a position of power, other people won't see it. Yesterday, someone was interviewing me for a Hindi channel, and he asked me 6 times, are you sure you started this business? Are you sure you run it? And I get it all the time. I actually found it rather amusing because, he's so far out from reality. I mean, it's 2017. If you are not used to the concept of women entrepreneurs, you are living under a rock. Anyhow, so seeing those things as a young girl, really having, I would say, more male role models for myself, of seeing powerful people. I said, I want to be like that. And soon after, I realized that this Indian education system is just a waste of my time. Because no one is ever going to use all that calculus and trigonometry, whatever they taught us. I don't think any of us are using 90% of the junk that they made us learn. And I don't remember the last time I quoted Shakespeare or used a chemistry formula. But I realized one thing about good education, it makes your parents happy. So you need to get good marks, otherwise you're going to get a fine. So I had pretty much decided that, look, I can't wait to get out of this damn school and stuff and get into the world of business. So by, I think, 15, 16, I was finished with my 10th standard exams. I started going to the office. which I thought was great. It was my father's office, and my brother was already working there. So it was kind of cool to allow me to just come in and understand department to department what's going on. And I remember I was so young in those meetings. We're meeting with Microsoft, we're sitting in the Oberoi, I'm wearing a business suit that I bought. They're very important. At 16. And they asked for tea or coffee, and my dad's like, oh, she doesn't have any coffee yet, get her chocolate milkshake. No! I don't have coffee today. Just go to Dunkin' and have it. But it was just so much aspiration, there was just so much that sense of being different from your friends, of meeting important people, of having that opportunity where someone is surprised element. Then she's this young girl, what does she know? And suddenly you say something that shows that you're in the know. It's such a high. I still love it. I still love the joy of being, a young businesswoman who is constantly underestimated. But then there's an aha moment, and you're like, wait a minute. Not only did I change the way you think about women, I also changed the way you think about women in general, not just about me.
Aha moment which took you to television.
So I'll get to that portion in a second. I'm trying to make it my journey because I didn't have exciting holidays, and it was actually. And then, so I started training, and I used to go to college in the morning because in Bombay, 11th class is college. So I used to go to college in the morning. And then I used to don this suit and then go for meetings. HR. Yeah. And I used to go for meetings, and that's when I realized, wait a minute, BCom is not like that. And my brother's a CA. I saw his books. I was like, I'm definitely not going to pass this stuff. This very fancy higher education is not myself, although currently I'm pursuing OPM at Harvard. So my family's still surprised that someone who waited to study so much is actually been to 4 universities. But that's when I decided, I made my own decision. I said, sitting in India in this pampered, closed, come home by 3 p.m. Environment, I ain't gonna learn nothing. I need to get out of here. So I made my own decision, did my own application, visa, whatever it took. And then at the grand age of 17 and a half, announced to my parents, मैं अमेरिका जा रही हूँ पढ़ने को. And they were cast, कितने दिन के लिए, 4 साल के लिए. And my dad said, go for 3-4 months. I said, it's not cooking class. It's a business degree. I am going. And surprisingly, my mother put her foot down. She was a housewife. She put her foot down. She's like, no, she's been working on it. Let her go. And when I went to the US, of course, this is California. This was 1999-2000. I just pretty much come fresh out of, India. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me. Because the one thing at that time with the tech boom going on, I realized there's great value for Indians. So unlike other generations and other parts of America where we saw some kind of, differentials for racism, politics, when I was in California, I remember classmates, wanting me in their projects because I think she's Indian, so she's probably very smart. So I actually played that card really well when I was in the US. I taught an IT class, I worked for the college newspaper, and there was this one point where I was running to be part of a student organization. And this is an aha moment. It's part of the aha moment. The aha moment has to build up.
Yeah.
It has to follow the movie.
See, you got to be a good storyteller for two.
Are you getting bored? Because then I get kind of And so I was doing different things in campus. As I said, it was very dynamic. Just sitting in class was not cutting it for me. I wanted to do different things. So I took acting classes, I taught an IT class, I drew for the college newspaper, whatever it took, kept my day busy. And in colleges, we all have these student organizations, associations. So in my third year, I decided, my roommate and I decided that, look, it's time for us to start applying and being part of some marketing association or finance or something. Now, my roommate is one of my best friends. I just met her in Dubai 2 days ago. But the other part is when you're studying with your friends, they are also your biggest competitors, right? So she was running for some other organization, I was running for mine. And much to my very big surprise, I lost. I was like, oh my god, I'm such a popular person, and I lost. And to make it even worse, she won. Which I was like, I can't fathom that. And she was just like, this is my aha moment to finally turn down. So first 3-4 days, I was like, this is so sad. I lost, I feel miserable. And that's when the entrepreneurial bug hit me. I'm like, you know what? if no one's gonna make me king, I'm gonna make myself king. So I went up to the dean and I'm like, I want to start my own student organization. I will be the head of it. And they're like, yeah, actually, let us find there is some process procedure. And they pulled out some, like, Xerox sheet from back of nowhere. You gotta get 4 friends to sign, give $25, register it, give your social security, whatever it may be. And bam, I was the founder chairperson of Global Business Leaders Corporation. And it gets better because I put up all these posters all over college saying that the world of business is big, learn your way around it, join Globus at USC.edu, Global Business Leaders, Globus, that's what I called it. I was always decent at branding. I put up these posters, I got all these people to sign in. The one person who I didn't tell what I was doing was, any guesses? My roommate. So then some friends went and asked her about 10 days, hey, are you joining this organization? And she's like, what organization? She lost. And they're like, yeah, we know she lost. I went for the consulting organization, but she's doing Globus. She confronts me, I still remember, it was years ago. She confronts me at the Starbucks on campus, like, what is Globus? When were you planning to tell me? And I lived with the woman for 3 years, but I was like, that, something. And it was so much fun because that sense of competition came in. I had a great time. But Globus became incredibly successful. They had students after I graduated go to Brazil and China. They had Natalie Portman as a speaker and do all kinds of good things. But that's when I realized the one thing about entrepreneurship is no one is going to write you a letter or no one is going to tell you, Acha beta, it's time for you to be an entrepreneur. You gotta wake up and say, I want to be the boss and I am going to start this. So that's the beginning of a very non-typical Indian girl who always wants to sort of shatter ceilings, do fun things, and realize that, hey, if I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a king, I should think like one and always go to the next venture.
So two lessons, right? Number one. Can I go to that? Yeah.
So two lessons. If you have the urge, and I'm sure a lot of you have already explored that, is to follow through with it, right? So the first and foremost thing about entrepreneurship, interestingly, I teach entrepreneurship, quite an oxymoron because I don't think you can really teach entrepreneurship. It has to be there, but I do that. It has to be there in you. You have to have the conviction, right? And the conviction sometimes is you don't start with very clear answers to everything.
Yeah.
The ability to take that punt is absolutely imperative. But there are many things in her case that actually supported that. Okay, so often than not, and this is a global phenomenon, specifically for women, where you need societal support. You need familial support, okay, people who sort of give you that extra hand. But most importantly, you have to have the ability to forge through all of these things, all right? And then seek who are the people who will sort of give you that helping hand. And in very many cases, people like her who've sort of been born into this, she didn't have done anything. And she could have still cruised on in life, right? But that whole thing about wanting to make something happen. And there are certain cultures in the world which actually lend itself a little bit more to it. And one is the US culture. And it brought out the entrepreneur in me only after I went to the United States. And I said, man, I can do anything in life. And I actually started my own company after I was the senior vice president in a firm. They had taken the company public, and then I said, I'm going to just sit down and do something on my own. I've run an M&A boutique. I'm not a classical investment banker, but I did that very successfully. The brand still continues as threshold partners, and I walked away at some point of that. So the key is, there are certain cultures in the world that actually bring on this entrepreneurialism a little bit more, but inherently you need to have it. I'm going to turn to Arjun here. Thank you for patiently waiting, Arjun. I didn't want to sort of, the first round has to be a little bit more personal and involved. Very interesting background. Okay, comes from classical, large company expertise. Today runs, a very successful $625 million
of fun. So the question that I have for you is, what do you look for? Okay, and I know your fund not only focuses on startups, you also have the the missing middle. You are looking for companies that are sort of successfully built themselves and they're getting into crossing the chasm to the ladder. What do you look for? And please talk a little bit about your own background.
Okay, so just first on the data, we over the last 20 years, we've looked at about 8 to 10,000 companies or brands, and we invested in about 87. 50 of those have gone, over 50 of them have gone public or been acquired, and about half of them, 25, are out of business. So, a certain amount of failure is just a fact of life. In fact, I think you started by asking how many first-time entrepreneurs. I have a different question. How many people have failed yet? That's awesome. Because if you haven't, you better pray that you fail fast. So you learn how to deal with failure. And if you can learn how to deal with failure, you'll be able to scale every step of the way. Including the greatest entrepreneur in the world, like guys like Steve Jobs, that were forced out of their own company and had to make a comeback. So we can talk a lot on the panel about these various businesses. We have, I'm an investor right now in Uber, Airbnb, and Palantir. At those levels, there's an extraordinary different set of challenges to scale. So scaling is it's not a static concept. At every level, for a company that's just starting, getting into the first 10 million, is massive scaling. It's going to, from 0 to 10. Similarly, from 10 to 100 and above that. So I'm also in a Salesforce right now. Same story. The company is doing $10 billion. It's a market share leader in cloud computing. But how do they get from 10 to 20? So scaling is always going to come back to you and be a massive challenge no matter what, right? So to take a step back, let me tell you a little bit about my own background, and then we'll continue with the panel. So I grew up in India. I'm happen to be a US citizen now. I live in San Francisco in the middle of Silicon Valley. My father was a civil engineer. In fact, he built a hotel here in Hyderabad. And so I finished college. I was at St. Stephen's got a degree in economics when I was 19. And I really didn't have a clue of what I'd do. And unfortunately, economics doesn't really teach you anything about anything. So the last thing my biggest dream was just to get those days the Hindustan Lever's management training program, which is a big deal. So I was just hoping I'd get an interview and get in there, but of course I got rejected in all of those. So I had no clue what I was going to do. Meantime, in college, I'd been a liaison officer with 6 expeditions in the Himalayas to peaks over 20,000 feet. And climbing became a little bit of a metaphor for me because you're taking on a massive target, which is, trying to get up a peak. And the creme de la creme was a virgin route on the peak. And you may be the best organized you possibly could be. Every step has been calculated, every logistic has been preordained. But even then, the weather can turn you back. You can't give up. You keep going back. Sometimes you're forced back and you go back the following year, etc. So I was kind of completely transfixed by that metaphor. And I was hoping just to go to America to just get to climb in Yosemite and a few other places. But lo and behold, I got a scholarship, exchange program at Washington State University on the West Coast. No one from my family had ever been to America. I didn't know Washington State was on the West Coast. I thought Washington was Washington, D.C. So I said, yeah, I'm coming. This is the closest international airport in Seattle. And that's when I found out Washington State. By the way, it's not that dumb because there's no other country in the world that has a state named after its capital. But in any case, I get there in 1980. I had $2,000. My father used to make roughly $20,000 a year. So I had 10% of his pre-tax income handed to me so that, as in many Indian families, the parents just want their children to get educated really well to stand up on their own feet. So I had extraordinary financial pressure from the moment I got there. Every dollar was, in those days, about 10, 12 rupees a dollar. So I started looking for a job from the first day I was there. So never underestimate what financial need can do. It's one of the greatest drivers in the world. Many of the greatest entrepreneurs had no money whatsoever. And it was their financial need that drove them to do something new and not give up. So in any case, I got a job. Minimum wage in the US was about $1.25. And I got a job at $6 an hour because there was the school, the soil sciences school, there used to be a lot of data coming in. The guy just said, we need to type it in. So if you teach me, you can pay me after I can learn anything. Just give me a shot. And he said, sure. So the second aspect is this whole role of angels. There's a lot of people that are going to come and help you if you're very honest about your problems. If you keep putting the problem under the carpet, it's highly unlikely you'll address it. But if you can actually articulate it, then extraordinary numbers of people will, and it likely won't be someone you know. It's probably not your family, or your friends, or your roommates, etc. But it'll be someone out of the ethos that will really blow you away with what you can do. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I got bachelor's and master's in computer engineering. I wrote operating systems. Two companies, Mentor Graphics and a floating point system that had actually been started in Oregon itself. And just, 1,000 kilometers south in the Bay Area, there was Steve Jobs had taken Apple public, Vinod Khosla had taken Sun public, etc. You were seeing these 24, 25-year-olds who were running companies, public companies, and just doing fine. So I was obsessed with trying to learn a little bit more. I felt I was an engineer and I was kind of technology geek, but I really didn't know much about business. So I ended up going and getting my MBA from Stanford. I was lucky to get there. And I spent the summer in Morgan Stanley learning what is this magic about M&A? How do these guys figure out what is the value of every stock, every company? And the more you kind of explore, the more you realize most of these things there's an approach, you figure out that formula, it's a repetitive notion of that same approach being applied again and again and again. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I finished that, I worked at McKinsey, I wrote the business plan for Qualcomm, and I wrote the business plan for a company called General Magic, which was a spin out of Apple. It was a precursor to Web TV that was acquired by Microsoft. And both those companies, no one knew what they were doing. They were just like two guys, kind of like your story, they worked around the clock, they had a dream, and they weren't anything like, I was thinking entrepreneurs were going to be like godlike, Greek gods or whatever you want to call them. But these are very normal, goddesses, what do we call it? So, in any case, they were such normal people. But the Qualcomm one was really what changed my life. So, most of you probably use a cell phone. Those days, there was an analog standard called AMPS. And AMPS is one conversation for one channel. Well, in all their glory, the Europeans came up with GSM, America came up with TDMA, time division multiplexing. That was 3x. Two guys on a planet of 6 billion people, two guys, Andrew Viterbi and Paul Jacobs, said this is wrong. If wireless takes off, no amount of wireless spectrum will be enough, and they launched a technology called CDMA that will be 20x analog. They had no customers, they didn't have any system, they needed to raise $100 million in those days, it was an absolutely extraordinary amount of money to even get started, and they had to convince a telecom operator to deploy it. So it was overwhelming. But they found one guy, Pat Bell, which is the Northern California, Silicon Valley area telecom provider. And the CTO said, absolutely, you got it right. So again, my theory of angels, he was their angel. And of course, the rest is history. You probably saw last couple of weeks. There's a tender offer for Broadcom by Qualcomm for $130 billion, etc. Another couple of things that came up about whether education and credentials. I happen to have a lot of degrees, and I love going to school. But if you look at the raw data, the top 5 companies in the world today are Apple, started by a dropout, Steve Jobs. Microsoft, started by a dropout, Bill Gates. The only topper, quote unquote, in the top 10 or 12 is Jeff Bezos from Princeton and Amazon, right? But everyone else is either a dropout. I'd say more than half of the top guys are dropout. And the other probably 30-40% of the rest is basically just, they were pretty average at school, finished their degree, were looking around and gone in. So entrepreneurship had nothing to do with the notion of degrees or someone else's path. I used to read a lot about biographies and autobiographies about people who I thought were role models. Like I was obsessed with how Vinod Khosla started, right? Because he was a middle class Indian. He's about 3 or 4 years older than me. He'd gone and he'd done it on his own, and that taught me a lot. And so I think I'll stop there and move to you. And then
So, good segue into two things. Yes, I'll take questions. So, here's something. Please jot down questions. We won't be able to take everybody's question, I can bet you, but specific questions on scaling up, okay? Because this is all about how do you go from point, not about how to start the business, if you are particularly going through a moment where you're saying, should I give up? All right? Because in the life of most entrepreneurial ventures, right, there will be a time when you are asked this question saying, should I just pack up? Right? Or even when you want to scale and you go ask for money and go to people like Arjun, right? They would put you through the ringer because it's not easy. And you'll come out saying, geez, I get rejected by 3 people, what the hell should I do? Should I continue? These are the practical, facets of entrepreneurship. There's a lot of glorified notions of entrepreneurship, but there's a lot of toughness to the whole thing. There's a very grueling moments where you're confronted with, should I take somebody else's money? I take somebody else's money, do I give up control? Am I just happy running a small business? I have my control. I'm the queen or king of what I do, right? Should I go buy another company or should I just continue to grow by myself? So typical issues that any entrepreneur will face. Is this size good enough for me? Do I take somebody else's money in order to scale? Do I go buy another company in order to scale? At what point in time, right? I want the panelists to actually reflect on these elements. Was there a moment in their life when they just wanted to pack their bag and say, listen, somebody is willing to offer me, I put in $3 million into this, somebody is willing to offer me $15 million, that's not the kind of money I'd ever see in life, let me take it and run? Or should I stick it out and go to that next level? So while the panelists are doing this, please send the questions over to me and I'll do a speed glance on it and I'll pop the question. I wouldn't know who it came from. It'll be purely on the interest of how interesting you make a question. All right, so observations, panelists. I don't have any particular order.
Yeah, sure. I can respond to some of that, Sushma. By the way, I just love both your stories. Really, really interesting. And a bit about Devta, but not what you did in college. Yours was amazing. So we should talk. I think there have been moments. Definitely, one has come very close to packing up. And I'm pretty sure all entrepreneurs go through that. Specifically, there were 2 offers which we went into those meetings saying if we get a certain target number, and I'm not embarrassed to say that target number was really, really small at that point in time. This was obviously in our dark days. One of them was in single digits, millions of dollars, and the second was $10 million. And I don't know what you want to call it. I'm not a big believer in luck, to be honest, but I think it's just one of those things where, like Arjun says, if you're really honest, you're doing the right thing, you're reaching out to enough people, networking, you'll find some angel. I think there was something about those offers which always felt like, no, this is falling short, and we kind of made up our mind, me and I had 2 great guys who joined me along the journey. I made them co-founders that we're not going to take this. And so we're lucky we didn't, because I come back to my firm belief that some of the best businesses have not seen light of day because people gave up too early. Some entrepreneur gave up too early, and therefore I always think that the single largest quality, like if you say what's the one quality you look for in an entrepreneur, whether to fund or just generally otherwise, I actually think it's resilience. It's as boring as grit, someone called it on the previous panel, grit, determination, resilience, because to hang in there when the chips are down for a longish period of time is really, really hard. And there's temptation is to do many things, especially when you have opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is there while you think everyone, you have a good degree, you can get a job. So you're thinking, hey, I could be earning this much, my colleagues, my batchmates are earning this much, etc. I could be doing this. You go back home with you're not met with very excited looks because you're going through a tough time, you're probably drawing nothing. I went through a period of time, 18 months, where I brought back, I took zip from the business because the business couldn't afford it. So those are tough days, especially if you've already got a family, those are tough days. So I think there are a couple of things you want to keep in mind during that toughest phase, and Sushma, I'm glad you called that out, which is, one is maybe degrees and maybe what they teach you, maybe calculus, yeah, but I think just basic math and basic analytics, like really basic analytics, like at what point will my business scale up enough that the revenue line can intersect with the cost line? If you're in business, you got to know that. And you got to know We can call it economies of scale today, we call it unit economics. Fundamentally, the point is, as you scale up,
how do you do the same thing better, and therefore how do you build the same service or product cheaper, and therefore how do you get the distribution out cheaper? I mean, this is like basics, right? And I agree, you don't need very funny stuff for this, but you need basic stuff. You need to know that, and if you know that, and that's looking 2 years out, and you're saying, okay, I've got this graph, now I've got to make my way there. And making your way there, I think you got to measure whatever you do very rigorously, very religiously, and very often to make sure you're on track. It could be, there will be some moment which will be off charts, which will be a quantum leap, you'll change your business model, you'll buy a new technology, you'll change something, but fundamentally are you moving that direction? You can't one fine day otherwise say you're done. So what helped us the most was what I call now discipline and depression. We decided during our toughest days that we'll decide every month, end of month, are we in for one more month or not? So we broke that down to a monthly rather than a daily. And it was really a big deal because if it's on your mind, it's on your face. If it's on your face, the three of you as co-founders, everyone's seeing it. We're just 20 people in the company besides the three of us. And they'd look at you and they say, I can't work for this guy, even he doesn't believe in his stuff. So it's very important. So we, every end of every month, we put our heads together and we look at we'd look at the numbers and we'd say, where are we going? We're getting there. And let's put in another month. And then we promised ourselves we won't talk depressive thoughts till the end of that month. And obviously, a lot of those, the recon for the month was very often done over a... So it was 2 painful years. Really 2 very painful years. If I look back, the best time of our lives, because you validate that you really believe in it, right? No one else's money, your own money, borrowed money. More than anything else, what used to eat me up all the time is the other 20 guys. These 2 guys knew everything. The other 20 guys who had blind faith. And then it started growing a little bit. Blind faith in you. So they are saying, you believe, we believe you. That was always the biggest one. Shucks, I hope I'm not leading them into an abyss. So I know Devita's dying to say something. It's yours.
No, I just to answer your question on numbers, and I think it's what a lot of people want to know here. 3 years ago, my business was $5 million. I started this company with a working capital of $100,000. By next week, we will be $100 million. So we've gone from $5 million to $100 million in 3 years. 2 things really mattered to me, and I will say this quickly because obviously I gave a background, but I didn't get a chance to speak on the business that I started. I have a very single vision that I want to have the most high-end tech brand out of India. And I realized that the consumers are changing. They're looking for something that is aspirational, high-tech, innovative, but it should also be affordable, easy, and quick. And so I came on to starting this company with the vision of really competing and going head-on with companies like Sony, Samsung, LG, etc. Because in India, even a city like Hyderabad that I see, we're pretty much doing the back-end work of the whole tech world. Why aren't we in the front end? Why aren't we the innovators? Why aren't we the ones who are taking those risks to come up with ideas that can really sell? But what took me from that idea of having a high-tech company, when everybody else said every Indian company that begins is only a price seller, and that's true. We have great products, but it's always sold on price. Even if I walk down to those Krishna pearls or something in Hyderabad, I remember going there years ago, and the first thing they gave me a coupon was discount. And I said, why in India do people always feel that to sell, I need to give a low price? You need to convince people why they're paying for what they are. So it took me 8 years of just going on and on about the fact that this generation understands value, not just budget. They want something high-end, but they want to be able to afford it. And to take it from 0 to 5 million took me 8 years because I stuck to my vision. It's when we found the right distribution with online, when we found that consumers had accepted our product and seen and understood that, hey, it is the equivalent quality of a Sony or Samsung, did we zoom to $100 million. So at every stage, the biggest question for me was not so much of, can I do this, can I not do this, etc. The biggest thing was, is there a market for whatever you have? Is there a possibility for me today to take my business from $100 million to $1 billion. The first thing you have to see, and Deep, for example, has opened up a very large market. But if someone had a business that was just focusing on hyperlocal, they would not be able to scale it. So first, is there a gap in the market, and is there a market in the gap? The first thing to see. The second thing I would also say, which is very important, I feel a lot of entrepreneurs face this, is not fear of failure, it's fear of success. A lot of people are very comfortable in that certain, business size. Do you really have the appetite to really desire a $1 billion company and be able to work towards it? If you are convinced you can do it and you see the sense in it, then it'll trickle down to your people. I have the same team. My Hyderabad guy's been working for me for 9 years when we were just like trying to sell one TV to one person. Today, he continues to buy my vision, even though the vision expands like 10x each year. So it's easy to keep your people if they've always bought into your vision and you have delivered. And the third thing I would say, as an entrepreneur, there will always be those points when, there is the quintessential, should I give up or should I not? 3 years ago at $5 million, 8 years, I was like, do I want to continue or not? The biggest, most important decision, and this is not something people will ever say in any PEVC thing, I know because I put in family money into this, is your business has to make a profit. If it doesn't make a profit, you're doing charity.
Absolutely.
I could be $500 million, but it has to make $1 billion profit. At $100 million, I make a profit. I know that I have to feed everybody in my office. I have to keep their house running, keep mine, and then look at something outside. And I think the biggest thing is that scale and grow when you know you have your backs covered. Scale and grow when you're making a profit, and don't do anything that I would say is just driven by seeing, great entrepreneur stories. Actually decide whether you have the appetite and whether you can handle that kind of growth. Yeah?
So I think of myself as the chief assistant to the entrepreneur, right? Because I'm typically chairman of the board or whatever, but any problem the entrepreneur has is our problem because it's going to avoid building a big company. And we have developed over the last 20 years a real structured framework. And we use that at every single board meeting, no matter what the size of the company. We even use it now, still at Salesforce, which is trying to scale from 10 billion to 20 billion. So the way it works is the product roadmap. Is your product just a niche product, or is it truly a massive product? And how big can the market get? The capital. Certain businesses, like a hardware business, is going to be very capital intensive. Where's the money going to come from? Certain other things, like a software business, maybe like Deep was talking about, maybe less capital intensive, right? So it's a different issue. Third, probably the most important, which is glorified, and people will talk about it superficially, but this is the toughest one, which is the team. And the test I use is I tell the entrepreneur, I'll give you my veto. You find someone who you can trust. Because unless there's power sharing, there's no way to scale at every level without power sharing in the CEO's office. So if one person or two people or three people are trying to make all the decisions, ain't going to work. It's never going to happen. Steve Jobs, by the way, failed the first time because of that. They have to be comfortable with a group of cohorts that they can depend on. No one else can predict it because each person will have a different set of things that they believe in do. And then the last three are really the critical ones beyond that, which is channels. Direct selling is very, very expensive. It can only go so far. Ultimately, all businesses that scale need indirect channels. The whole ecosystem that you need vibrant around you. Most of my companies are in technology, and therefore there's another aspect of technology, like in Salesforce, again, there's the App Exchange, a lot of people writing to them. But that version of other people that are working to your platform. And lastly, your customer pyramid and anchors. So in the beginning, maybe you think about $1 million customer is huge. Over time, now at Salesforce, we're trying to get $100 million customers. The challenge is still the same. How do you take the customer pyramid that you start with, or at any level in your life cycle, and take it to the next level?
So we're going to move into rapid fire rounds, and if I can ask my co-panelists to give very pithy answers, okay? So 30 seconds tops. And I've sort of been browsing through the questions, and I may not be able to get to every question, so you got to have, humor me here a little bit. I'm going to take ones that I think are interesting. I'm going to start with you, Arjun, all right? Pithy answers again. What should a founder look for
when he is accepting investment? This is Vijay Kantaria.
Okay, there's a lot more money than good ideas. So I would take all my time, and there's 3 criteria: experience in your space, contacts in your space, and someone you trust.
So don't rush to take the first money that you get if you have any doubts about it. By this token, I don't say that you have to necessarily shop around, right? I mean, you have to exercise your judgment, but if you have a doubt, shop around, right? So, question for any one of the panelists out here: how do you sort of navigate the complexity of decision making as your business evolves? How did you evolve personally?
Mother of all questions.
Mother of all questions,
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah, the first one is, I mean, it's pretty complex. Hard to give a pithy answer to that. But I think you can break any big problem into a series of small problems. And I think that's key. In fact, if they weren't for problems, there wouldn't be businesses. So at least every time we're trying to develop a new feature or new product, it's not typically not coming because one guy has dreamt it up, whether it's a product manager, whether it's me, whether it's some other CXO. No, it's typically coming because we've heard it from the customers. So we listen to customers a lot. We've reinstituted Go-to-Market Day. I restarted that. It became somewhere along the way, people started forgetting that's the most important thing. One day a month, top 100 managers out in the field, meeting customers, meeting small hotels, meeting all kinds of retail and business partners, and writing in with their insights into a Google Doc. And we're actually just really trying to solve problems which customers are telling us. So if I meet customers and I read a lot of the complaints that come to us, and if there's a pattern that's telling us something, right? Now, we might keep defending and saying, oh, but this software does that, but we are able to give this. That's not the point. The customer wants something else. And it's amazing how different the customer is to what we think. In India especially, for those of you who don't know India, there are like 30 states are like 30 countries of Europe. Very, very different habits, culturally very different, holiday time very different, how they travel different. I call it the 10 shades of being vegetarian. We have 10 types of people, I'm telling you, of being vegetarian. It's not even funny. But it's true. So when they travel overseas, we have to be their consultant and partner. So we just try to break the problem into micro problems. That's my solution.
Okay, Piti again. Any thoughts on the same question?
When I was at Harvard, there was a very interesting question that they asked us, and there's a whole class on it. And I want all of you, if not anything else, do take this from my talk, is ask yourself, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? Would you like to own 20% of $1 billion business, or do you want to own 100% of a $100 million business? Unless you realize what is your motivating factor, is it just you want to be part of a big team and get the money? Or do you also enjoy being the one who's in charge, making all the decisions? I think your ability to raise money will matter whether you want an investor who is very active or someone who just gives you the cash to scale.
So there's another flip side to this, the whole concept of social entrepreneurialism, right? You can't afford to forget that. In the times to come, social entrepreneurship is going to become huge, right? So it could even be a societal cost. Now, social entrepreneurship does not mean you don't make money, okay? You make money while you're doing a good cause. So I think that's an area that is a huge evolving area, particularly in India. I've fortunate to have very good friends, Sunil Wadhwani being one of them, who started a big, the Wadhwani Foundation. So most successful venture capitalists, entrepreneurs are now beginning to sort of spark that, and it is a need of the hour for countries like India. So social entrepreneurialism is an area that I would urge all of you to kind of look at. Right? Now, Piti again, quick question. How do you ensure that you carry your team along with you as your vision changes, as the market changes? There's nothing static about business. Any secret sauce, any mantra that you have to carry the people along your vision?
So I'm also a part owner of the Sacramento Kings NBA team. And I'll use a professional sports analogy. There's no better teamwork than professional sports, right? You have to work together. You got to make it work. But a professional sports team has coaches which help people and each player get to the next level, whatever they are, wherever they are in the hierarchy. And secondly, they have a draft. Every year, fresh blood comes in. Certain people move through the ranks. They may become free agents. They may move on. We use that analogy very, very closely in all our companies. As an entrepreneur, you have to always, and the board and your top management team, have to constantly think of who's scaling individually and who isn't. and where and what are the gaps and what are the kinds of people you have to recruit. And then for the top team, keep going back to the same basic issue, which is forget the credentials. Are you individually going to be able to trust that person and actually delegate to them so that you can scale?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love the sports analogy, and it's just so true. Always say that corporate life is soccer, and it's not playing tennis where one individual can win you the Davis Cup, but it's all about really everyone on the field together. And I like that part about the growing and the evolving, because the reality is, and it's a sad reality, because founding teams, especially founding team members, feel very bad when they don't necessarily move up with the rest and you get other people up. Yeah. So everyone scales at different levels. Everyone's got a best before date, including the founders. We need to know that, and we definitely need to play to that. So you have to sometimes bring in new talent, and sometimes people will get left behind. It doesn't mean they have to be shunted out, but clearly you have to sit them down and explain. And those have been actually my hardest decisions, where to tell senior founding team members, I think we need better talent out here to come and do this, but do something else. And those are the only things
So I'll flip that question around. Okay, when will you give the reins over to someone else?
Yeah, so, I think it's very hard to say yourself. So I have a board and I listen to my board. I have independents, some really good guys who are now on the advisory board, like Sanjeev Bikhchandani, Irina Vittal, who are anything but brutally honest. And, I'm happy to listen to that. I know that my co-founder, Rajesh, is a much better manager, execution, day in, day out guy. And that's why then, we dial down that with him. And I probably do a few other things, which I'm more passionate about, and then you're logically better at. So a lot of the new kind of product development I'm super excited about. That's my go-to. But he's got more rigor. So you've got to know your strengths, I think, and play to them. Gone are the days where you have to work on your weaknesses. I tell this to young entrepreneurs all the time. Forget about it. Fundamentally, people don't change beyond a certain phase and stage of life. If you're 30 or 40, you're not going to change. But figure out your mojo and figure out your strength and double down there, because that's the whole game. It's not about becoming well-rounded. I mean, there are enough well-rounded people out there. If you're an entrepreneur, you just got to be phenomenal in one thing. No, I didn't mean the pun unintended. but you have to be just phenomenal in one thing. And that one thing can be, just figure that one out. It'll give you joy and you'll be great at it. And what Devita probably did in college, there was an entrepreneur in her. For those of you who are not Indian, probably don't know that she's Marwadi, so it's actually in her blood.
Business community.
Yeah, this is it's true. So it was always there, but then she needed to express it, and sometimes a tough time brings it out.
To come to that I would always say that put together a team of underdogs. And I'll tell you why. Yes, I'm a Marwadi. We're called the Jews of India very proudly because of our business genes. But it's also the most conservative community in India. Till date, the percentage of
nowadays it's the Rajputs, by the way.
Yeah, they're so conservative. Even now, Marwadi women just do not work. They get married when they're 19, they produce a bunch of kids or whatever society expects them to. Even now, I think I'm the black sheep and shocker of the community. And that's what I realized was my strength. I'm very fortunate. I've had the same team for the past 11 years. And that's because
very unusual.
I realized the importance of equality. In my team, we don't differentiate on age, we don't differentiate on gender, we certainly do not differentiate on religious background. And when you give people who don't necessarily have a great space fit in the corporate space, because of some disadvantage in their so-called demographic, and you give them that opportunity and say, look, I don't care where you came from. If you're committed to me and this company, I will train you, you will grow. And believe me, those are the guys who are going to stick by you. Now, whether all of them are going to be exported to a very senior level, I do not know. But I have a guy in my team who started 11 years ago as a cleaner. His job was just to wipe tables. Today, he's heading retail. So let me tell you, it's very, very, very important, especially in countries in different parts of Asia or Africa, even the US for matter. It's not a level playing field. If you want to build a great entrepreneurial team, find the guys who aren't a great fit in the traditional corporate setup. Find guys who are entrepreneurial, guys or girls who are entrepreneurial, who want to be entrepreneurs, may not have the money or backing, do not get the same kind of respect or equality outside. If you give it to them, let me tell you, they will be your most committed and dedicated foot soldiers because you gave them a chance when nobody else did. So the number one rule in any company, if you want to be a great boss, put in equality. Get people only on merit.